Hello, puzzlers. Welcome to the Small Pieces Big Picture podcast, where you get to decide how all of your pieces fit together to create the big picture of your life. I am your host, Jason Wendroff-Ronicki. The problem I see right now is that everyone is telling you what to do. From what you eat, to the exercise routine you follow, what your mindset should be, how you should make your money, what you should do for fun, and the list goes on and on and on. And you are hurting yourself by following someone else's advice. The only person that advice is good for is the person who created it. In this podcast, I will give you food for thought and assignments on different ways of thinking, feeling, and behaving. I will leave it up to you to figure out how that fits into the big picture of your life. I encourage you to get back to using your intuition of what's right for you and stop listening to the sound bites of others. All the pieces you need to fit together to be whole are already inside of you. You just need to put them together in your own unique way. So let's get to puzzling. Today, I want to focus on something that's just as important as what we're eating. And that topic is how we are eating. A lot of today's diets are focused on carbohydrates, fats, and proteins, which are the macronutrients that we need to keep our bodies healthy. Also, there's a lot of talk about supplementation, which is all about the micronutrients that we need to keep our body running efficiently. But here's a question. When you are at high levels of stress, our cortisol levels in our body are at its height, and that decreases our body's ability to digest and rest so that we can process all of the healthy foods that we're eating. So even if you are eating a fully organic and healthy diet, your body may not be able to take those nutrients and convert it into vital energy it needs to keep itself running smoothly. So we sometimes need to look at how we are eating our meals and how we are eating our foods in order to get the optimal digestion that we need to convert that food into energy and into vital nutrients so that our body can use it. So I want you to take a moment to think about how you consume your meals. Do you do it in front of a computer listening to the news? Do you do it in a place of stress? Do you do it standing up at your sink, right? All of these things make a huge difference on how we digest our foods. So let me tell you a story from one of my colleagues about how he was able to shift one of his clients' habits of eating to help make a huge difference in his experience. So my colleague was working with a very busy doctor who had a couple of behaviors that he was unwilling to part with. One of those behaviors is that he would eat breakfast and lunch at McDonald's, and he would eat his meals on his way to his office. So he was unwilling to give up those two behaviors, eating at McDonald's and eating on his way to work. So he negotiated with his client about different ways they could use to adapt his behaviors. He made a few recommendations. One of those recommendations was stopping at McDonald's and eating actually in the restaurant rather than eating in his car. The doctor refused to do this, so he negotiated that he would eat the meal in his car and not drive back to the office. My colleague also recommended for him to take 5 deep breaths before he ate his meal. The doctor was not willing to do that, so they negotiated 3 deep breaths before eating his meal, before driving back to the office while eating his meal. Within a few days, my colleague got a call from this doctor, and he said, "You won't believe what happened. Just the act of taking 3 deep breaths made the doctor realize that he actually hated to eat McDonald's. He did not like the taste of the food. He did not like the experience of how he felt after he ate the food. So the act of taking 3 deep breaths before he ate his meal, even though none of his other behaviors changed his awareness of what he was eating. He realized that he needed to put so much ketchup on his sandwich that he couldn't taste the food. And the act of taking those 3 deep breaths made him stop for a moment and realize what he was eating was not really good tasting or good for him. So I'm encouraging you to take a look at the way in which you eat your meals. And I'm going to give you 5 tips on how to change how you eat your food. So tip number 1 is find a nice quiet space. Research shows that if you're in a noisy, loud environment, your body goes into that stress mode and you're unable to digest your food well. So tip number 1 is find a quiet space. Tip number 2 is no multitasking. When you eat your food, take the time to eat your food. Don't do 3 other things while you're eating, like working or listening to the news or scanning the internet, being on social media. All of these things take your awareness away from what you're eating. Tip number 3, take 3 to 5 deep breaths before eating your meal. This will bring the energy back into your digestive system and away from the extremities and prepare you and set you up for your success while you're eating. Tip number 4 is say some form of affirmation to your body. And this is the affirmation that I use, and you can use a piece of it or you can use the whole thing. Or just a simple phrase of, I am using my food to nourish my body. But here is the affirmation that I use when I am sending that affirmation or preparing my body to receive the food. Affirmation to my body. I recognize you are the temple in which my spirit and creative energy dwell. I have created you from my need to have my spirit manifest on earth so that I may have this time to learn and grow. I offer you this food so that you may continue to sustain my creative energy, my spirit, my soul. I offer this food to you with love and a sincere desire for you to remain free from dis-ease and disharmony. I accept you as my own creation. I need you. I love you. Here are a few other affirmations that you can say if that one was a little bit too long. Everything I eat creates health and harmony in me. Feeding myself is an act of self-love. I know that I am loving myself in this moment. Let the act of nourishing myself be a meditation. I relax my face and my muscles. Relaxing involved in sitting and chewing. When my mind wanders, I gently bring it back to chewing, tasting, and breathing. Everything I eat creates health and harmony within me. And tip number 5 is make sure that you smell your food with each and every bite. Most of what we taste is based on our sense of smell. So make sure that as you bring the food up to your mouth, that you take a smell of your food before putting it in your mouth. Now, for those of you that like sweets, you may actually be able to reduce some of those sugar cravings by just smelling sweet things. it's not always the eating and the digesting of the sweetness that we like, but it's the aroma of the sweetness that we enjoy. So sometimes just smelling the food will be enough, and you won't actually have to give in to those sugar cravings. So now let's take a moment just to go over a simple eating meditation that you can do even with your next meal. So with your meal in front of you, I want you to sit up nice and tall. I want you to feel your feet on the ground. Press your sit bones into your chair and lift the crown of your head up towards the ceiling. And then I want you to close your eyes and take 3 deep breaths. See if you can slow down your breath. Feel your belly and your chest moving. And just take a moment to connect inward. And if you want to use one of those affirmations that we mentioned earlier, feel free. Now, I want you to reach out and pick up the food. So if you're using something that requires a spoon or a fork, just notice how your hand grabs the utensil. If you're eating something like an apple, and just notice how you are going to pick up the food. And then as you continue to breathe, pick up the food and raise it to your mouth. And just notice the whole raising process. See if you can make it nice and slow. Bring the food up to your nose and take a deep breath in so that you can smell the food. And then once you have smelled the food, I want you to place the food in your mouth. Now, don't chew yet. Let the food just sit in your mouth. So if it was with a spoon or a fork, right? Or if you had to take a bite, as in an apple, just notice how you got that food into your mouth. Once you've noticed how that food is sitting in your mouth, then I want you to start to chew. And we should be chewing our food anywhere from 20 to 30 times per bite. This allows the enzymes in the mouth just to start to break down the food before you even do the next thing. Then you're going to swallow the food once you've chewed about 20 or 30 times. And notice how the food moves down past the esophagus, into the chest, down into the belly. Notice when you can't notice the food anymore. And then you're going to reset the practice, or reset the food, or pick up the next bite, whatever the next step is. Then you're going to pick up the food, raise it to the mouth, smell the food, place the food in your mouth, chew the food 20 to 30 times, swallow the food, watch it go down to ingest and digest, and then reset and repeat. Pick up, raise, smell, place, chew, swallow, ingest, digest, and reset. And let me just repeat those processes and those steps one more time. Pick up, raise, smell, place, chew, swallow, ingest, digest, reset. And keep repeating that process so that this way your eating becomes more mindful. Eating mindfully is definitely a great step towards reducing those cortisol levels in the body so that your body can digest everything that it's going to eat. Another practice which I really think is important is also a gratitude practice for the foods which come to our table. We always forget the supply chain of something simple like an apple making it to our table. And it's important to acknowledge every step that piece of fruit or that vegetable or that piece of produce has the journey it's taken to get from its origin to your table. And so I want to take a moment to go over looking at the supply chain. So I want you to go into your pantry and pick out like maybe a piece of fruit, something simple. I'm going to use an apple as my example, but you can grab whatever fruit or vegetable is available to you, right? And then I want you to, once again, take a seat, have that piece of fruit or that vegetable sitting right in front of you, and just take a couple of deep breaths. So I'm going to use an apple as my example. And when you think about the farmer, the apple grower, that person had to originally plant a seed and had to water that seed and take care of that seed so that it grew into a tree. That's even the first step before it's even able to produce fruit. So that farmer had to tend to his tree until it was mature enough to produce fruit. Then once that tree is able to produce fruit, he was able to get his farm hands to go and cultivate that fruit. So he has a whole group of other people that are responsible for picking those apples and putting them in a bin, and then that bin gets sorted. Some of the apples go to the supermarket, some of them go to co-op, some of them he sells in his farm stand. So then there's the sorting of the apples that happen. Then the bin that goes from his farm to the supermarket. So there's the truck driver that comes in to pick up the bin to take it to the supermarket. Then from the truck, it goes into the supermarket. Then the people receive those apples from the truck into the supermarket. They then sort them and put them out for display in your local supermarket. You then go in to the supermarket and pick out your apples. So every fruit, every single vegetable has a supply chain that goes through a number of different hands so that you are able to bring it to your home and into your family. And this is just the journey of one simple fruit. Now imagine that you are making a recipe that has multiple ingredients. Each ingredient has its own journey. And when we can be grateful for the journey of our foods, and we can acknowledge all of the people that are touched and make an income from the foods that we purchase, we can also acknowledge the power that we have to decide how we spend our money and who's being affected by our spending. I am a big proponent of supporting our local farmers because farming is a very, very hard profession, and we need to make sure that we are supporting our local farmers. So I am an administrator of a CSA, which stands for Consumer Supported Agriculture. And the money that I spend on my produce goes directly to the farmers, because what happens is that in the supermarket, they have a lot of criteria of the foods that they're able to be able to sell. So apples need to be a certain size, a certain color. They can't have any bruises. They can't have any markings on them. So a lot of food on the farms goes to waste because they can't sell them to the local supermarkets. But they are nutritious foods that are delicious and are able to be sold to the consumer directly. If you're interested in directly supporting your local farmers, look for a CSA in your area. The other reason why you would want to use the CSA is because you get vine-ripened fruits and vegetables. Most of the vegetables that you purchase in the supermarket have been picked very early, so the fruits and the vegetables haven't been able to obtain their most nutritional value because they need to pick them early so that you can get them while they're still ripe. When you purchase directly from the local farmers, they can let the fruits and vegetables ripen on the vine so they are more nutrient dense. And those are the two reasons why I support a CSA, is because it directly impacts the farmer financially and you get more nutrient-dense foods. In our modern-day busy lifestyles, it's sometimes difficult to pay attention to how we are eating our foods. When I was growing up, every dinner we would get together as a family and my mother would make dinner. Now, a lot of families are eating out more regularly. They're eating at different times. There's no family dinner night. So even if you can get the entire family to do one meal together and do a little check-in with each other and ask how their day was or how they're doing, or even if you can just take a couple of deep breaths together as a family, that would be a good step in being more mindful with your meals. Anything that you can do to move in that direction would be a great next step. You don't have to do it all at once. You can take one little bit, one of my 5 tips, and you can implement them today on your next meal, because it's great to have this information, but information without practice does nobody any good. We can know things. I know how to eat well. I know how to exercise, but if I don't do it, it's not going to make an impact in my life. So whatever you can do, no matter how small it is, because small habits compound over time. If you can practice taking 3 deep breaths before each and every meal, not even between each and every bite, between each and every meal, then that is a step towards putting good habits into place. Finding that quiet space. If it's difficult to find that quiet space, then at least say an affirmation to yourself. Everything I eat promotes my health and well-being. Right? Find a simple way, or just making sure that you smell your food. Right? So there are so many different things that you can do to move yourself in that right direction. And we can't really complete our discussion of mindfulness in our eating without looking at also the more important question about why we're eating in the first place. The main reason that we eat to begin with is to replenish our body with vital nutrients that it needs to keep itself running smoothly and efficiently. When you look at the physical energy that your body receives from each meal that you eat, you can't do it in the moment. You have to wait about 20 to 30 minutes after you eat a meal, and then notice how it makes you feel. The food that we eat either gives us energy or takes away our energy, and you don't get that experience until about 30 minutes after you eat. So if you want to take a look and analyze how the food is affecting your energy levels, After your meal, set a timer for about 30 minutes. When the alarm goes off, then notice how you feel. If it's giving you energy, then you're providing your body with energy-giving foods. If you feel depleted, then you are taking away from your body's ability to function. So we could absolutely look at all of those pieces of how our food affects our well-being. But there are, as we all know, many other reasons why we go to the refrigerator and grab a bite to eat. Some of those include emotional reasons. So are you eating because you're angry at something? Are you sad? Are you bored? Or even on the other end of it, are you eating because you're happy? A lot of times we get together and break bread with friends and family in celebration of something. So there are all these other factors that are included on different reasons why we eat. A lot of people say, well, only eat when you're hungry. But then there's also a little issue of habits that are built into that. When we eat on a regular schedule, having, let's say, breakfast at 8 a.m., lunch at noon, and dinner at 6, our body gets into these rhythms of habits. And so sometimes around noontime, we start to get hungry just because the body is expecting food. Now, habits are a really great thing for our body, but we also have to look. Maybe you had a really big breakfast and your body's still digesting. So at noontime, your body may give you the signals that it's time to eat and it gets a little hungry, but really you have enough vitamins and minerals and micronutrients to get you through to a little bit later. So not that habits are bad, we just have to look at the motivation. Also, our bodies get used to how much sugar, how much caffeine, how much alcohol, how much fat, how much protein. It gets used to our daily intake. So when our patterns deviate from those daily intakes, our body then responds. And I'll give you one of my favorite examples is I love a good cup of coffee in the morning. But my body also gets used to that caffeine intake. I drink my coffee around the same time every morning. It's usually around 9 a.m. And so when I don't drink my coffee at 9 a.m., my body responds by dropping its energy levels because it's expecting that caffeine boost. And so sometimes I feel a little sluggish if I'm a little bit later in having my cup of coffee because my body is already anticipating the boost from the caffeine. So it drops its energy level to maintain its balance. So it's a good practice if you do something like that. It's a good practice for maybe every 6 months, maybe every year to stop having that thing. Like coffee is a good example. Sugar is another good one. So maybe for a week every year, cut out sugar, right? Then our body can reset its baseline. So we need less of that substance to give us the desired effect. And I try to do that with anything that I habitually am involved with. So I'll cut out caffeine, I'll cut out sugar, I'll cut out alcohol, those types of things, just so that my body can reset itself and establish a new baseline. There's also other reasons why we eat, like looking for something to do. A lot of us are working from home. Many of us are spending extra time in our homes these days, and eating and consuming food is a way of using some of your time throughout your day. So if you're eating just because you are looking for an activity, try to do something a little bit more productive, like maybe exercising or moving your body or dancing, so that this way you can fill the same time that you would maybe necessarily be used to eating and snacking in a more productive way. And the last thing I want to talk about is motivations for eating is sometimes we eat to avoid things that we don't want to do. There's an expression when trying to be productive to eat the frog first. And what that means is to do the thing that you're least excited about first, so that this way you can get that out of the way and do the things that excite you and spend more time doing that. And sometimes, even in my own experience, when I look at those activities that I'm not excited about, I'd rather go to the refrigerator and eat rather than do those activities. So knowing that avoidance is a major reason why I know I eat, I look at that more closely and ask myself, what am I avoiding to do? And try to get to that task first so that I can do it, get it out of the way, and do something that I'm a little bit more excited about. So now that we have an understanding of how we eat, how we can make it more mindful, and looking at our motivations for eating, we can eat in a more mindful way, so that this way we're just not stuffing everything down and trying to hide our emotions or dull our experience of life when eating. So that's what I got for you today. Hopefully you could take some new ideas and implement them into your daily life, and I'll catch you next time. If you're enjoying this podcast, there's two things that you can do for me. One is you can write me a 5-star review. So however you're listening to this podcast, if you could just review this podcast and let me know what you like about it. If you don't feel like you can give me a 5-star review, please email me directly and let me know what I can do to change either the subject matter or tweak the presentation. And then this way I will personally read the email and I will send you back some information based on your feedback. So that would be really helpful. The other thing is if you could head over to my Patreon page, the link is in the liner notes, and just donate a couple dollars a month to help me to create this great content so that you can really be inspired to put your pieces back together or put them together for the first time to really live more holistically, more happily, more joyfully. That would be amazing. Thank you very much for your support, and I'll see you at the next episode.